Hello everyone, I'm Jocelyn Kotchie
And I'm Graeme Gilling.
and together we are the joint chairs of the Australian Piano Pedagogy Conference, which will be held in Perth next July.
The conference we're very excited to say the conference will be held at the University of Western Australia, the most beautiful campus in Australia, and at the lovely University Club. So it's going to be a wonderful venue to host this incredible conference.
So on behalf of the APPC, the AMEB and CHOSE Australia, we're delighted to welcome you to today's workshop with Lisa and Laurie Bastian. To tell you a little bit about Lisa and Laurie. Lisa began piano lessons at the age of 4, studying with her mother, Jane Smizer Bastian. She received her Bachelor of Music in Piano Performance from the Drake University and her Master's degree in Piano Pedagogy from the Arizona State University. After completing her master's degree, Lisa moved to New Orleans and taught in the preparatory department of Loyola University. Lisa now resides in New York City, where she maintains a full-time teaching studio from where she joins us today.
And as I forgot to mention before, Lisa will be attending the conference in person and presenting next July. So it's another great reason to come and join in. And our other presenter this morning is Lisa's sister, Laurie. Lisa also began piano lessons with her mother, Jane, Laurie, at the age of 4. She received the Bachelor of Music degree in Piano Performance from Rice University, Houston, Texas. Currently, Laurie teaches both private and group lessons to students of all ages in her home studio based in La Jolla, California, from where she joins us today.
So collectively, the Bastion family has authored over 500 publications that have taught millions of students worldwide how to play the piano. Lisa and Laurie have both been teaching piano full-time for over 30 years. Today, they're excited to share their teaching experiences and their music. Welcome, Lisa and Laurie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We are really excited to be here, and we thank you so much for joining us at this time. I'm Lisa Bastian, and I'm coming to you from New York City. I am really looking forward to the 2022 APPC conference. I love Australia, and I can't wait to visit again. Today, I want to start by saying that I truly adore teaching piano. It just brings me so much joy, and I count myself lucky to love what I do. I teach about 30 students each week, and each student receives a private lesson and a group lesson. For the past year, I've been teaching my students exclusively online, and about 5 weeks ago, I went back to 100% in person. And I have to say that I am overjoyed to see my students, and really more than that, to hear them play live again and to hear live music. I realize at this time, more than ever before, how grateful I am for my students and how grateful I am for all the love that music brings to our lives.
And I'm Laurie Bastian, coming to you from San Diego, California. I have to start in exactly the same way by telling you that I absolutely love to teach piano. I also have about 30 students. They come to me twice a week, once for a private lesson and once for a group lesson. And for the past year and a half, I've taught some in person and some online, but also, like Lisa, I started teaching 100% in person in September. And it's just been such a joyful time. I've got my first live party next week. We're having a Halloween party, and the students are going to play one Halloween piece, and then we're going to have punch and games, and it just seems like a really hopeful time to be bringing the community back in my studio and to having live music again.
This is a picture of my piano studio here in New York City. It is on the 20th floor. So for the past 25 or so years, my students take the elevator up to their lessons. I recently added this second piano, which I really love. And a lot of great music making has happened in this one little room for a lot of years.
And this is a picture of my studio, and it's in my garage. And for most of the year, I leave the garage door wide open, and it has always felt like I'm teaching outside. We are really excited to share our newest course with you today. It's Bastien New Traditions. And today we have 3 goals. Number 1, we want to let you hear the music. So we will be showing you pieces from many of the different levels in this course. Number 2, we want to show you how we've used the course with our own students. And number 3, we will really be honing in on talking about musicianship and technique in the late elementary student. So we're mainly going to be looking at the first few levels, but I want to let you start by hearing one of my favorite pieces written by Lisa. It's called Autumn Breeze.
Here's a picture of the 3 of us. Our mother, Jane, Bastian, is in the middle here. Some of you may know that our mom passed away in 2018. And then Lori is on the right, and I'm here on the left. And together, the 3 of us co-wrote Bastien New Traditions. And we met every year at Christmas time in Salt Lake City to work on this course together for many years, probably about 12 years. So Mom wrote all of the beautiful duet parts that we're sure you'll enjoy with your students. And Lori wrote the warm and clever lyrics that really reinforce the concepts on the pages.
And Lisa wrote all of the original solos. She wrote the theory pages, and she put the books together for us.
Bastien New Traditions is an all-in-one piano course. It's designed for students ages 5 and up. There are integrated lessons, theory, technique, and performance pages. It is a gradual multi-key approach, and we worked really hard to bring you lots and lots of new music, new lyrics, new accompaniments, and beautiful new watercolor illustrations. I would say about 90% of this course is brand new, and about 10% is tried and true. So how does it work? As a teacher, you have a choice. You can either start with Primer A, which is all pre-staff notation. There are pieces, single line pieces on the black keys, single line pieces on the white keys. It really does give the student time to understand the topography of the piano keyboard. There are some rote pieces and lots of other things like that. Or you might choose to skip Primer A if you would like to begin right away with reading notes on the staff in Primer B. In Primer B, the notes are introduced one at a time, beginning with middle C, and the students experience reading for the very first time. I would say with about 85% of my students, I do like to go through Primer A, even if we go through it quickly. It just gives my students a chance to form a good hand shape, learn to read some basic rhythms, and learn to actually play the piano a bit before they begin with note reading. But if I have a student who, say, has had some prior musical experience, we might skip primer A and go straight to primer B. So we are going to be focusing on the later elementary student, but I want to just go through a little bit of these earlier levels so you get a sense of where we're coming from. So as I said before, primer A is all pre-staff notation, single line melodies on the black and white keys. And one of the first things that we like to do is to help our students with rhythm.
So at the very beginning of lessons, maybe the first or second lesson, I like to introduce the metronome. This is an example of a 5-year-old student who just started a couple of months ago. I let him play around with the metronome and kind of teach him how to use it, and we start clapping rhythms with the metronome. Here you're going to hear him counting out loud using the counting system of just saying the note value names aloud, but we always encourage teachers to use any counting system that they like to use for teaching. Okay, let's start with the metronome. Ready, clap. Quarter, 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 rest. Quarter, 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 rest. Okay, half note. Quarter, rest. Quarter, 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 rest. Wow. And we wanted to let you hear one of the pieces that was using the black keys. This student was 6 years old, and you're going to hear her playing along with an accompaniment, and I'm going to be talking about these accompaniments that go along with each book a little bit later.
1, 2, ready, sing.
We've got it on loop, so it's going to start you again.
1, 2, ready, play.
And just to give you an example of a pre-staff piece on the white keys, we have Ode to Joy here. Lori is playing the student part in California, and I am playing the teacher accompaniment in New York City. And one of our editors put this together.
1, 2, ready, play.
So a lot of times we get the question, how long does it take students to complete primer A? And generally for our students, approximately 2 to 4 months. Again, it just gives the student a chance to form a good hand position and really just learn to play the piano and understand the topography of the keyboard. Next, we have primer B, which is an introduction to staff reading. And we do introduce one note at a time here, starting with middle C. And one thing we've worked really hard to do in this book is to create layers of learning so that the student experiences the note using many different senses. First, they draw the note, they play the note, they hear the note, they sing the note, and they recognize the note. And just so you can see how this is shown on the page or how these activities happen on the page, the first thing the student does is to draw the middle C 3 times. The art reinforces this. We did work really hard with the artist to hopefully reflect everything that we were trying to teach on the page and the art. Then the student is going to have a little piece using this note middle C called My Line. And you'll notice that there is a circled finger number 2 here. This indicates that there's a finger change, or in some cases a finger movement as the student advances. Here we want the student to play this middle C with finger number 1 and then finger number 2. We do this so that the student does not associate a particular finger with a particular key on the piano keyboard. And then finally, the student is going to recognize this note on a flashcard. So there's this miniature flashcard at the bottom of each page every time a new note is introduced. And there is a number on the flashcard, in this case 25, which corresponds directly to our Bastian music flashcard set. So as we go through this book and learn new notes, and as we go through the course, we're simply separating out these flashcards based on the number on that little flashcard icon. We do really use flashcards still. We have lots of other things that we use. We certainly use apps and we use workbooks and things, but we really like to start with the flashcards right away in the very beginning. And the main 2 things that we're trying to get the students to do is to recognize the flashcards quickly and then to be able to play those flashcards in the correct place on the piano.
So the first thing that we ask students to do is just to learn how to use the flashcards and practice them independently. So you're going to see my student, I teach her that if she flips the card over, the answer is there, and she's just going to go through and name these cards. Okay, so we're just going to show how you practice the flashcards. Just when you're ready, name each card and then flip it over.
Okay. F, C, D, G, E.
And then once the students know the names of the flashcards, we start to practice them on the piano. This was a Zoom lesson that I taught maybe a year ago, and Lisa and I didn't see each other for a really long time, with her being in New York and me in California. And so one of the things that we thought was fun was to join each other's lessons on occasion. So she was meeting one of my students here.
Hi.
This is my sister Lisa. Hi, how are you?
Pretty good.
Good. Okay, I want you to line up your flashcards. Okay, and then when you're ready, can you just play each card and say its name?
Okay.
And then we want to let you hear some of the pieces from Primer B. This one is called Family Time. This is one of our favorites. And Lisa mentioned that my mom wrote the accompaniments, and she wanted them to be really interesting harmonically, but she also wanted them to be accessible. So here I have a grandpa who can accompany his granddaughter. They were together during quarantine, and he practiced with her every day, and it was sort of one of the very positive moments of my week to see these two together.
1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's so beautiful. Lift your hands. Good. All right.
Another thing that we really try to promote in students who want to do this is to sing the words as they play. Some students are dying to do this, others are not. We really do encourage our students to count out loud, because we just think that it really helps them so much. So if they're not singing, we really want them to be counting. But anyway, in this case, this little student was dying to sing the words. So I have sort of 3 steps that I want the students to go through before they actually sing the words. The first thing is I want the students to be able to sing the letter names of the notes aloud in rhythm. Then I want the student to be able to count aloud comfortably in rhythm. And finally, we work on singing the words at the lesson aloud, and then we add the accompaniment. So here's an example of this.
2, ready.
Cherry cola snow cones, lemon berry snow cones, mango melon snow cones, all delicious snow cones.
By the end of primer B, here are the notes that the student has been introduced to, just so you have an idea. And it takes students generally about 3 to 6 months to complete primer B. So if the student starts primer A in the beginning of the school year, you can assume that they would be finished with the 2 primer level books in that first school year, or they might even be further along than that. Level 1A really expands note reading, and then just more technique becomes part of what we're doing as well. Accidentals are a big focus here in level 1A. And one of the things that we did to help our students at home, we put a little keyboard above the first accidental in every piece so that the student will shade that key and they will know where it is on their keyboard when they go home. One thing that has really helped my students to prepare for recitals or festivals or really anything is to have them make their own videos at home, and then we go over them together. Sometimes they send them to me and I comment on them and I say, hey, you need to fix this, that, or the other. This is a little student who was getting ready for a recital playing Windy Night. The pedal is introduced as an option in primers A and B, but then we introduce it a little more formally here in level 1A.
And I'll be playing Windy Night.
Another thing that we work really hard on at this level is just to teach students a little bit how to shape a melody. And all we want to tell them initially is if the notes go up, you're going to get louder. And if the notes go down, you're going to get softer. You'll see this little student that this was taken, I don't know, she's probably had lessons for a year at this point. And you can even see when she's counting out loud that as her notes go up, her voice gets louder. So she's starting to learn about this.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
By the end of level A, here are the notes that the student has been introduced to. So most of the notes on the staff. And really our main goals in these first 3 levels are to help build a good hand shape for the student, to help develop solid rhythmic skills, and to work on producing a beautiful tone. Those are really the main things that we're working on. Next, we move on to level 1B. And this is really probably where the late elementary student starts. This is, the beginning of that period. There's the overview here of level 1B. The main thing is the students are going to be note reading, they're going to read notes covering the full staff. And we are working on more advanced technical and musical skills. There are lots of pieces that use the full range of the keyboard here. And throughout the course, I want to say that there are lots and lots of different hand placements so that students are not locked into traditional 5-finger patterns, although those are explained as well. There are some pieces here using 1 and 5/7 chords, and the rhythms that we focus on here are the eighth notes and dotted quarter notes.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the free app that goes along with every book. And we have here a picture of the inside front cover from 1B. Basically, we call this app the Interactive Practice Studio. And we highlighted this code in the middle here in a green rectangle. So each hard copy book has its own unique code. And that code is what the parent needs to put in order to download the app. So the students can download, or the parent can download the app at the very first lesson when they're using these books, and they can download it onto their phone, their tablet, or their computer. They can download it basically up to 3 devices. And I want to show you a little video just sort of that explains what the IPS app is. So in general, I want you to think of it as a practice partner. It's something that the students use at home, that they practice with, and we find that after they've learned their pieces well, they have the best success at then trying to practice with this app, which is basically a recorded accompaniment and student part. And just in general, what we found is that students who practice with this, they learn to play the piano sooner. They learn to play in rhythm sooner. They learn to play more continuously sooner. So here's just a little explanation of what this is. Okay, so go ahead and select the IPS app. And then select My Book List. And select 1B. And then select Electric Guitar. Okay, and then can you point to the top speaker? And that's the one that you would select if you wanted to play with only the student part. And then point to the bottom speaker. How would you describe the bottom speaker?
The bottom speaker, basically like you're in a band, because it adds extra music.
Right, so that bottom speaker has the accompaniment and the student part. Okay, and then select the bottom speaker for me. Oops, you didn't get it. And then that brings up this menu, and then can you select the loop feature? And I'll talk about that in a bit. And then let's show the tempos. So show me where the normal tempo, it's already there.
Highest.
Okay.
Slower tempo is the second highest. Slowest tempo is the slowest.
Okay. Okay, so go ahead and... So now I want to show you one of my students practicing this piece called Electric Guitar. And it's going to take you through the different tempos, and then at the end it's going to start over. This is my favorite feature about this IPS, is that it has a loop feature, and this just means that once the student is done with the piece, it just goes back to the beginning and they have to play it again. And this is where I have found that my students have really learned to play the piano sooner. Start with both hands on the piano. 1, 2, ready, play. Here comes again. 1, 2, ready, play. So some of the technical and musical concepts that we are learning in level 1B are to lift our hands at the end of slurs. We talked a little bit already about shaping the lines, playing with soft phrase endings, and balance between the hands. This is page 20 in level 1B, and this is one of my students. He is 6 years old here. And I want to say, first of all, a word about the theory exercises in our course. we tried really hard to use the theory exercises as a way to prepare the student for whatever was going on that page. And they're very short as theory exercises go. Ideally, we do the theory exercises with our students during their lessons. So first of all, my student is doing this exercise, and then he's going to be practicing a technique page.
Count in with me. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Soft. Now start soft. 1.
Sorry.
Sorry. Let's do it again. 1 and 2. They're gonna get softer on the way down. 1 and 2 and lift. 1 and 2 and now end.
One of the things I think is really interesting about the way Lori taught this student, she worked on this technique exercise with him for a period of weeks, and then they sort of put it away and then they brought it back. So it was really easy for this student to play it. It was memorized, and then they were able to really focus on the technique of lifting the hand, the musicality of it, and so on. And I think that's one of the best things that we can do for our students, is to get them comfortable on something so that we can focus on all of these details. The other thing that's introduced here in level 1B is the 3-note chord. And one of the ways that I do this with my students is I say I have a magic Q-tip that we're going to use to elevate fingers 2 and 4. It's very comfortable under their fingers. It's kind of gimmicky, but it does work for some students, and it's worked over many, many years for me. So here's a little student now playing this 1 chord.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Another thing we have here throughout the course is just a connection to supplementary materials. And one of the things we're focusing on here are the treble clef line notes. At the bottom of the page, we explain that this correlates with our lines and spaces note speller. This is a book in our Bastion Theory Boosters series. And this series is basically a theory series that you can use with any method that you might be using. These books are one concept each. So the main concept here is lines and spaces. There are coloring activities, games, puzzles, things like that for the students to do. And we have 12 books in the series. And I would say that we wrote these with a wide range of ages in mind. So we really hoped that students that were little could use these, as well as some of your older students. So they look pretty generic. They're a lot of fun. They're quick projects. And we use them certainly in private lessons, but we definitely use them in our group lessons. We really like to teach big concepts all at once, like say major key signatures, and then talk about how that applies to building chords, building scales, everything else, and those kinds of things. We've certainly used these books in our summer camps as well, and we send them with students on vacation sometimes if they want some review when they're going away. And when we're trying to put everything together, you know, putting all the technical and musical aspects that we've learned together, one of my favorite ways of doing this is I have a winter recital every year where students play either Christmas carols or Hanukkah pieces or really anything they want to play that has lyrics. And we have the student play and they accompany the entire audience. It's a really great way to sort of see if the student can keep going when they're in a room filled with a bunch of people singing, sometimes not on pitch. And it's really something that my students look forward to, their parents look forward to this recital, and the grandparents love the recital as well. So here's a little student playing the Star Spangled Banner. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Yeah.
And taking a look next at level 2A. Level 2A is really just an introduction to scales and chord progressions. The student will harmonize using the 1, 4, and 5, 7 chords.
The first piece in this book is Eine kleine Nachtmusik. It's an arrangement. And this was a Zoom lesson that I taught, and it was always one of my favorite lessons each week because this little brother was always actively watching his sister play. This piece, I think, is a great one for many reasons. Number one, students love it. And with the accompaniment, it has a really nice big sound. But technically, it has a lot of different articulations, and it's a little bit of a longer piece as well.
1, 2, ready, play.
I like to show this setup that I finally came to rely on when I was teaching online, and we decided to leave this slide in here because we know a lot of teachers may still be teaching online. But having this webcam, which gave me an overhead view when I was demonstrating, was really helpful, as well as having an external microphone. And I used this microphone called the Fafine. And I had my students use an external microphone as well, and it just kind of got us through, it made the piano sound a lot better, and that for me was one of the things that saved me. So the concepts that we're going to be talking about in 2A, students are going to be learning to play scales for the first time, or at least, the first time it's written out on a page. They're going to be working on balance between the hands and shaping the lines. So we introduce scales in level 2A, beginning with page 44, and you're going to see, again, the student doing some of the theory work right before we actually start trying to play a scale. And basically this theory portion is helping him understand what the scale is, how many notes are there, and what the fingering is.
Over with 3, not 2. 2, 1. Again. 1, 2, 3. Under. Do it again. Don't use your elbow. 1, 2. Start to lean. Motion. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Now move over though.
We also introduce chord progressions. And the IPS is really helpful and has a lot of different, just really short, this is like a 4-measure exercise that I can get my students to practice kind of over and over again to learn these chord progressions. And then we've been talking a little bit about balance. Here we have a page where the student has to bring out the left hand for the melody.
Okay, so we're going to try to bring out the left hand melody and shape it and keep your right hand quiet. Yeah, count in.
1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and
Now soft A. Lift. Lift. More and less. Lift. Last word. Prepare home.
Levels 2A and 2B are really great for teenagers and transfer students. Sometimes we get a transfer student who's playing something that's much more difficult in terms of their literature, but they really still need a lot of work on basic note reading or things like overlapping pedal or just whatever the case may be. And the pieces in here sound a bit more sophisticated and they're pretty easy. And our students have really been willing to go back and work on some simpler concepts while they're continuing these harder pieces.
Here is Theme from Serenade for Strings by Tchaikovsky.
So I just want to tell you a little bit about something that I learned during the pandemic that I'm definitely going to keep doing now that we are hopefully coming out of it. And that is that I was having a really hard time playing along with my students over Zoom. Obviously, it's just basically impossible. And I wanted something for them to follow along with in the very early stages of when we were learning the pieces and so on. So I would have the student learn the notes to the piece, and then I would make a video of that piece using the metronome, and I was counting out loud and giving them sort of some instructions in it. And I would just text that video to the student or the student's parent for the student to practice along with. And in this case, this little student wanted to play Serenade for Strings with the IPS because it sounds really great with the orchestral accompaniment in the background, but she wasn't ready to play the tempos, even the slowest tempo was giving her trouble. So I sent her this video and then we moved on to play with the IPS. So here it is.
Here is Theme from Serenade for Strings by Tchaikovsky. And I want you to play along with me. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3. 4 and 1 and 2 and. Did you see how I shifted the weight? Watch my right hand. Are you counting? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
One of the things that our mom told us for our whole lives, and we heard her say it at conventions and workshops and so on forever, and to all of her students was practice slow, learn fast, practice fast, learn slow. For most students, it is really just so beneficial to practice slowly, to get everything right from the very beginning. and then move the tempo up. And this is something that we really think helps with the musicality and certainly the technique for the student, if they can do it slowly and really understand what they're doing. This is something we really emphasize throughout. And now I just want to talk a little bit about overlapping levels. Many students, they're going along in a method book and they want to play something harder, and we really encourage that. So as soon as they get to, I don't know, if they're in note reading and they've learned most of the notes on the staff, they might choose something in a higher level. And here is a student who did just that. We have an easier piece here, a medium piece, and then a piece that's more of a challenge piece.
We do have the Bastien Piano Literature series that we like to introduce when students are approximately around level 2A or 2B. And this literature series has 6 volumes, and all of the pieces in this series are original pieces written by master composers.
And also they represent all 4 periods of music. So if you're using them for any festival or whatever, you've got all 4 periods represented. We also want to make you aware that we have brand new Christmas books to go along with Bastien New Traditions all in one course. And we hope you'll enjoy those with your students. Levels 3 and 4 just came out and we're really excited to use those.
We want to thank you again so much for coming today. And we want to end with a quote, my mom's favorite quote that I heard her say at the end of every workshop that she ever gave, which was to teach each and every student as if he or she were your very best one. So again, we thank you for being here, and now we want to open up for questions.
Hi. Thanks so much, Lisa.
That was really terrific. Thank you very much. We do have a few questions that have come in. Can we feed them across to you?
Sure.
All right, so the first one we have is, do you have any tips on creating good posture with very young students?
I would say when I start very young students, I definitely encourage using a footstool. I mean, that's one thing, just to kind of get balance. And it's something that I work on all the time. I think most students typically sit in the wrong place. They sit at the wrong height. A general bench that goes along with a piano, if it doesn't move up and down, it's very low for a student. But one of the things that I'm sure we all learned was what kind of an instrument our students were practicing on during COVID.
Yes.
And I think that was probably one of the most fascinating things. I mean, it was like just mind-blowing to me. The pianos were so out of tune. The students are like, practically on top of the piano. And so actually, that was one thing that I felt I was able to improve during COVID, because it was really, you could kind of get them, this is the wrong bench, or you need a pillow, or you need a footstool, or, because we set it up in the studio and it's fine. But I think you just have to really try to be aware of it.
I was going to say the other thing that I really like in terms of my footstool, I have a pedal extender and I just use that as a footstool as well, even if they're not using the pedal. And that's something that's easy. And then I also have a bench here. I don't know if you can see it, that just adjusts up and down really easily back here. And that's been really helpful. The other thing that we like to do is this whole thing with having your fists out to the fall board so that you're the right distance from the piano. And then in terms of posture, I think of a string coming from my head going up to the ceiling. I tell the students to think of that so that they're really sitting up straight and so on. It's something that we work on for a long, long time. And yes, I mean, Lori is so right. I mean, just seeing where everybody was sitting and seeing everything that was going on, it made me pause. So
yeah. Thanks very much. Thanks, Lisa. The next question is from Jemima. Regarding getting students to practice, I'm sure you know with your experience that it can be very difficult to get students to practice. How do you encourage your students to practice?
Well, we have lots of little different incentive things like prizes, and we have CHOS actually publishes some music money. I don't know if you guys have seen that in Australia, but I think there's different dollar bills. So I think there's a Beethoven's on one and Bach is on another and Chopin's on the $100 bill. And so we have that little prize thing going on all of the time. That's one way. Another big way that I find is to have lots of performances throughout the year and lots of goals for the students, because I think really within the first, so I've been teaching for 5 weeks and I have my Halloween recital on Sunday and everybody's playing, even the high school students. I just said, choose something easy that you can learn in a 5-week period and memorize. And everybody's really excited about that. And then the next thing will be the winter recital. And then we've got a couple of festivals right after that. And then our version of, the AMEB here, that kind of thing coming up. And so there's always these goals coming on. And I think that really helps. Additionally, I think the group classes help so much to motivate the kids when they hear other people playing and they're together with other kids. That's been a huge motivator. Lori, do you want to say anything?
I mean, definitely. I would say a really more basic thing is just when I'm meeting students for the first time to tell their parents and to show them, my brochure and to say, it's really my goal to teach students whose families really place a value on a musical education, and just try to explain them to them from the very beginning, sort of what's involved. All of that being said, we all do know that reality sets in, and sometimes the students just don't practice as much as we want them to. But I agree with Lisa wholeheartedly. Having a community within the studio is probably the number one factor, and we like it because our students come to us twice a week, so we see them twice a week. We get to hear them play twice a week. Lisa and I both really liked that, and we noticed when we were raising our own kids that, like, if they went to soccer, they had to go 2 or 3 times a week or whatever, and we really liked that model. So those kinds of things help, but just a lot of external motivators. Like Lisa said, they can earn money for practicing or for achieving a goal, and then later we open like a little student store. They can spend their money. So those little things with little kids, stickers and prizes, those things really help.
Thank you. I'm sure that's helped Jemima. And Amanda has asked, sometimes I have trouble with students who seem to have no sense of rhythm. How do you tackle this?
Gosh, I mean,
I think you have to really make it a huge priority. And like I said, for me, the thing that seems to make the biggest difference is the slow practice, introducing the metronome very early on, using it. Like if you saw those videos, the metronome is usually on. I'm constantly like talking with it. I think the metronome is very important, and also using the IPS, having them have a model at home that they can count out loud with, that they can play along with.
Yeah, piano is a really solitary instrument. And so having these other ways of making a video for the child to play along with, or playing along with the IPS, or playing with another student. Sometimes we overlap lessons so that 2 kids will overlap for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and then just play with each other, even on the same piano, or now I finally have a second piano in here, but that's been really fun for students to just play with others. And I think all of those things help with the rhythm. As much as my students don't want to do it, the counting out loud really does help in the long run. And that's something that we emphasize a lot.
Terrific, yeah. It's so important in that foundational stage. Now we have another question. This is a more general, just context question that was relevant to all of us, or group of questions. Are you teaching in person now? I think you've already answered that, but how did you manage the transition from online back to in-person post-COVID? We're coming out of lockdown in Victoria and our studios and schools are looking at ways of managing it safely. Thanks for any advice.
So one thing that both Lori and I did was we wrote a policy, a COVID policy, which was, that we wanted to make sure that everyone was always masked at all times. I'm in a building in a high rise and I really wanted to be safe within our building. So they come directly up to me and we're all masked, like I said. And right now, I'm really lucky. All of my students 12 and older have the vaccine. They've got both shots. And I know that the little ones will get it as soon as it's ready, and all of the parents have it. And, some babysitters sometimes bring the kids. So I feel pretty confident in that right now. And that being said, I got 2 air purifiers in the apartment. I have the students waiting in a slightly bigger, I had a very small waiting room, but I actually have them waiting in this room that I'm in now, which is normally my studio. And then I'm teaching in my living room because it's just a bigger space and I'm opening the windows. And so I think when I told the parents that, and we had this policy went around, I got very few questions. Everybody was just so grateful to be back in person. That it was really, it's been great so far, 5 weeks. Fingers are crossed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. How do you tailor your approach to older adult learners? This is Rebecca asking this question. She mostly teaches young kids, but has had a couple of requests for adult beginners once they can teach in person again.
We do have a book called Piano for Adults. It's also an all-in-one course. And we certainly use that with our adult students. But if I get like an older beginner, I might start them in Primer B and just go quickly through Primer B. You can use these books with older kids and just go at a faster pace. And Lori, would you like to say anything else?
Yeah, so you mean by like an older, like a 12-year-old or something you're talking about, Lisa?
Well, I presume she means like adult learners,
yeah,
maybe university age students, perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe she means older teens. Yep.
Yeah, for that age, I would definitely use the Bastian Piano for Adults. And it, it's similar to, in ideas to this method, but it's it moves a lot more quickly, wouldn't you say, Lisa?
It moves more quickly, and it does have the IPS now available as well. So it's got the accompaniments, it's got a lot of the same things, it's got theory on the pages and that kind of thing.
We have one more question.
Yes, and this is another anonymous question, really reflecting on the difficulty of online teaching and how hard it is. How did you adapt to the sound of piano on Zoom? The sound is never as good, as we know.
Yeah. I will say that the external microphone helps, and Zoom has, the Zoom sound has gotten somewhat better over time, but I mean, it's been hard. I don't.
For sure, the external microphones though helped a lot. So I made my students get those, and even the one that I'm using was a really, really inexpensive one. And I when I at the beginning of last year, when we were still like, I knew so many people were going to be online, that was something I put in my policy for the year, and I sent out the link and please everybody get this external microphone, and that helped so much. And I could always tell right away if the students weren't using it. So
I also had I had the students make videos of themselves at home, because that quality was so much better than Zoom, and then I could comment on the video. I just can't say enough about using the phone to video me, to video the students, to have them play with the video. That was sort of my savior during this whole period.
It's helped a lot.
Yeah.
But thank you both so much for answering all of those questions, and also just for your wonderful workshop. We'd like to mention to those attending today that the workshop will be up on YouTube soon. Details will be sent to you, so feel free to share that information with your friends. The Bastien Piano Method books and all of the books by Lisa and Laurie are available across Australia from all good music shops or wherever you buy your print music.
Thanks, Jo. And this seems like a good time to remind everybody that this is a taster of what you can expect at next year's APPC here in Perth at the University of Western Australia, July 4th to the 8th. And we really look forward to meeting you in person, because we've all had enough of this online. Contact great as it's been to help us through all of this. And thank you for joining us at this workshop with Lisa and Laurie Bastian, which has been brought to you by the conference itself and the AMEB, one of our principal sponsors, and Chose Music Australia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.